For Native American families, losing a loved one to violence or disappearance often means losing them a second time when the justice system fails to pay attention. Today, advocates in Omaha are working to change that. The Ponca Tribe of Nebraska hosted a training at the Durham Museum, bringing together advocates, law enforcement, and families from across Indian country. Speakers shared what to do when someone goes missing, and they pointed to progress. A case out of the Sioux City area, which began more than 40 years ago, led to an arrest this year. Organizers say that is what community accountability looks like.
People don't really realize how much of an influence that one individual has, and when that person's gone, how they're really affected. Those overly happy and joyful personalities that, spread sunshine and they're gone, like that weighs on people.
The Ponca Tribe's domestic violence program offers local resources at its Niobrara site.